So this is the Scooter question that came up in question 6 with the ellipse and the parabola again. So it's a slightly less curvy parabola, or sort of a shallower parabola if you want to call it that. So this has one of the other unusual things that they can ask you for the question. So I suppose we'll just have a look at the ellipse part. It's a quarter of an ellipse you're drawing, but we have a problem. We're not given the minor axis or the major axis, which is this way, or the minor axis, which is this way. What we do have is a focal point, and we do have a point here that we know is on the ellipse. So there is a bit that we haven't really covered yet, a rule basically that we have to use. However, if you did come into the exam and you don't remember this rule, again, if we look at this and we say, well, that's 78, so that's a bit bigger than that. So we could guess that that's around 90, and this is 38, and this is a bit bigger than this. You probably guess that's around 45. Or even 50 or something like that. And you could continue on if you were stuck. But I suppose we just look at sort of a concept that occurs, and because of that we'll start with the ellipse part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw this baseline here, and then I'm going to mark in point F1 and B, and you'll see what we'll do then. So I'm just going to draw it lightly. I don't think it's overly big of a question. So I'm just going to draw a baseline somewhere around there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in maybe, I don't know, 60 or 70, say 70. And I'm going to mark F1. Okay, I'm hoping I'm not too far over. Let me just see, 40, 30. No, I should be fine. I'm just afraid that maybe my part of it might contest. No, I should be fine. Right, so what we know there is it's 78 from F1 to the centre. So we could mark that. And they also show us F2, which is actually a hint. So it's another 78 to there. And you'll see why F2 is a hint. Okay, some people would have missed that. Okay, so we then know that B is, if we come in 23, and we go up 38. Okay, so there we go. So that's point B. So what I'll do is I'll just get my black, maybe my brown, a little bit less smudgy, and I'm going to mark this thing. So there's focal point 1, there's point B, and there's focal point 2. Okay, so what's actually a rule is if I draw, or a concept I suppose, or a point, or I suppose you could call it a theorem as well. If I draw a line from there to there and there to there, so my two orange lines there equal the length of the major axis. So the distance from F1 to any point on the ellipse is this, and the distance of F2 equals the same as the major axis. And that's basically based on the Trammell method, which we haven't looked at, but basically a way that you could construct if you were trying to draw an ellipse in a motor class. You could use a piece of string, you could mark focal points, and there was a way of sort of holding your pencil tight against that, and you could draw your thing. We don't usually do too much in the TG exam because you'd have to bring the string with you. Okay, but basically that's a rule. So basically the distance from F1 to B, or any point on the ellipse, plus the distance back to F2 is the same as the length of the major axis. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw this down. Let's see, I'll put it, I'm going to keep it just down here, maybe over on this side, just so that we can see it. Okay, so I'll just take my compass and just mark those distances. Okay, now you could measure it with a set square, but this is probably the most accurate method of doing it, and it's the least likely method that you're going to make a mistake. So maybe if I should start from this side. So I'll call that F1. That there is B. So hopefully that helps to make it obvious what we're doing. I'm just hoping on a space to F2. I think I will, but just hopefully. Okay, it's gone to the edge of the page, but it just fitted. Okay, so I sort of put it down there, so just be careful if you're doing that. So let's double check that size. Okay, so that's the distance to F. That's the wrong color, to F2. Okay, so all I've done is I just drawn it out somewhere else on the page. Doesn't matter where I drew it, I just tried to keep it a bit away from what I'm doing, because what I need to do is I need to bisect that in order to find out what the actual half distance. Now again, what I could do is I could say, well, right, I'll measure it, and that distance there is about 180. So what did I guess? This was 90. I was pretty much right. It might be maybe 182. I was pretty accurate with that. Okay, but I'll bisect it. Okay, now again, I'll just look at what might happen if you're bisecting it, particularly because I put it down towards the bottom. So I want to set it over halfway. I want to set it around there. Okay. So if you put it very close to the distance, you can fit it on the page, right? So that will work. It's probably not the most accurate method, but that will work for my bisection. However, in most cases, you'll draw a higher arc, and if you can't get it on the bottom, you can just bring this down. Just bring it down. This angle here will actually be perpendicular. Okay, so if that happens in your case. But if you're doing this in a junior cert, you'd actually be doing this on an A2 page. It would be twice the size of this, so chances are you'd have loads of space for it to fit. Okay, so what I know now basically is I know the width of the minor axis. So I said, if you're just starting this question and you're an ordinary level student, you can take that this is 90. I think it'll actually work out around 91. But 90 would be fine. Actually, I should have only drawn a quarter of it because I only needed a quarter. Right, so I've gone a little bit further than I needed to, which doesn't really make any difference. But the only reason that I don't want to go too far is because I don't want it to interfere with when I'm drawing these bits. So what I do now is I take the distance of the major axis and I put it on this on focal point and I strike it here. And that point there then is my minor axis. So again, I had guessed around 45. It looks to be about 43 or 44. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write these here. So if that bit is too difficult for you, don't worry. I should write it here. That's 44. And I want to say this is 91. Okay, now again, yours may be slightly different if you do it at accurate. I'm using the thickness or a marker, so the thickness may be a little bit off. So if we guessed 45 and 90, the question would have worked out. We would have lost a little bit for this construction, probably no more than 10%, right? So again, it's a quarter ellipse, so I'm just going to do a quarter of it. So we'll use maybe a different color than the orange so it doesn't get confused. Maybe a light blue. Okay, so I'll do my pizza slices as normal. Okay. And where they hit the major circle, I'll bring it down. So my pink circle on the outside is my major circle. My pink circle on the inside is my minor circle. And you'll see that if we sketch this in, it will also go through point B, which is what I'd expect. So that actually gives me three points for that. Okay, so I'm happy with that part of it. I've technically got heavy over as far as, I'll just do this half here. Okay. And we look maybe at putting, well, I suppose we could put in the circle at the minute. Okay, so there is a method for doing the tangent. I'm not going to cover that today. Okay, so we're just going to draw in what looks like from G to C as our best guess at it. Okay, there is a method for doing it, but I think we've enough to be doing in this question rather than looking at that. Okay, the amount of time that we have to do it. Okay, so we measure up 15. We'll take our compass. And I suppose I'll draw it light first. Maybe I'll use a different colour so that it doesn't get mixed up with the pink from before. And I suppose we get this part of the moped done. So I'm going to draw that. I'm going to draw the full of it if I want. I suppose they showed the full of it, so even though technically all I need is this part. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to twist this around so that it looks to be tangent. Okay, so that it looks. Just checking that my measurement is correct. Yeah, it looks a bit bigger than it does in the question. But anyways, so that it looks to be tangent. So I'm going to twist around so that it looks accurate there. It looks like it's only going to touch it at one point. I'll draw it down, okay? And then what I'll do is I'll just go heavy over it and use this slightly darker colour. And I'm happy with it. Alright. Now, we haven't shown exactly how I found that point, but sorry, we do want to show the point of contact. So what I'll do is I'll hold this against this and I'll draw a 90-degree line there. So that's literally the point at which the curve starts. While we haven't covered this fully, and we may lose a mark or two, having that line there will be worth, we'll get back some of those marks. Okay? So the last bit I suppose we look at is just the seat part. Now again, this is something that we have covered briefly before. And it is one of the more difficult parts. So again, if you're not sure how to do it, just draw it in. What you have to do is, if you have a point and you want to draw a normal or a tangent to it, the first thing you have to do is you have to bisect the line or the angle between it and the two focal points. So we know where F1 is, we know where F2 is. That orange line is something we typically have to draw in. So what we'll do is we'll bisect an angle by setting our compass to any random distance, finding the 2 points there, and basically bisecting that. Okay, so what I did is I set it to any distance, marked these 2 points, then kept it at the same distance, moved my compass to those points, and then struck it again, or the two of them meet, will give us the splitting of this angle. Now, what you could also do is you could also take a protractor. You'd lose a few marks, but you could also take a protractor and you could measure that angle and then divide it by 2. Okay, so we know that this picks up 15 millimeters more from point B. So we measure up 15, and we'll bring that over to here. And I have there basically my, let me shade it in there a little bit, my seat. So I have my seat, I have my, I suppose the back part where the engine will be, I have my curve here, and I suppose I may as well finish off this part and put on the wheel while I'm at it. So we know that that's 23 over from the focal point. So I'll use maybe a red. And I suppose one of the key things that actually, oh, that's also on the line that we had here for B, and it's up, no, we don't know how far up it is, but we do know that it's 15, the ground is 15 millimeters down below. So if it's radius 20 for the biggest wheel, we can back up 20 from there, and then we'll set our compass to 15 and to 20. So we'll do the 21 first. Okay, now one of the important things to understand about the question is every bit that you get drawn in gets you an extra mark. Everything that you draw on the page is going to be worth something. So if you get stuck with the question, just skip that part and move on to something else. Okay, so there's my wheel. Okay, and we could heavy in maybe the bottom part of that, or we could shade it in maybe if I have a grey here. Okay, so even if you couldn't do the ellipse, guess something and continue on. And same with that at the wheel. If you could definitely put in the wheel, and even if you put it in the wrong location or like that, just still get something for putting it in. It's better than not putting it in at all. So the next thing, the question is mainly about doing a parabola. So if you read the question, you'll see that this part here is a parabola. So we have to come over another 30 for that. And we know the width of the parabola is 20. Okay, so it took me a little while to see that. Basically, it's level with that. Okay, so we'll come across another 20. And we know that the height of it is 80, so 40 and 30 and 10. Okay, so there's a little bit, this is probably one of the harder ones, and I suppose if you can do this one, you probably could do pretty much any of them. All right, it's a little bit tricky to see some of the measurements. Okay, so half of 80 is 40. We'll bring our center line there. We'll mark our vertex as we normally do, which is point J. 20 divides by 5 evenly, so it's 4, 8, 12 and 16, and 40 divides by 5 evenly, so it's 8, 16, 24 and 32. Okay, so what we do is, let's see, maybe a yellow, these lines here will go straight across, and maybe if I zoom in on that, but I should have zoomed in on it earlier. Okay, sometimes you're not sure how big the question is going to be. So there's my construction, and we mark where 1 and 1 cross, where 2 and 2 cross, where 3 and 3 cross, and where 4 and 4 cross. Okay, so we can sketch that in, there's no hidden detail. I'll heavy that in at this stage. Okay, and we'll repeat for the other side. So instead of me having to mark the sizes again on the bottom, you can literally just mark them off. Now mine may look a little bit off, mainly just because of the thickness of my markers. Okay, it's not ideal to be drawn with such thick markers for something the size, but at the same time, if I drew it too thin a pencil, it'd be very difficult to see for the video. Okay, and the same. I suppose the other handy thing is if this is going up on YouTube, even if the quality of your download isn't brilliant, the thicker marker makes it a little bit easier to see. Okay, I should have used the yellow to bring them across. Okay, so I'm not going to number them there, but it's the same method. 1, 2 and 2 cross, 3 and 3 cross, 4 and 4 cross, And I have my curve there for where my feet would fit in, basically. So what we know now is basically if we come over 40, we have our center point for our front wheel. So that is 40 from this point. Yeah, so it should be back a little bit from F, so I'm happy enough with that. So I'm assuming the wheel is the same size and it touches the ground. Yes, it's radius 20. So what I'll do is, this is my ground line. So if it has to touch the ground, I need to measure 20 up from the ground. So by pure coincidence, it pretty much lands on top of that line. So again, I'll draw my wheel first, which is my 20 distance. And then set my compass to 15. And I'll draw the inside of the wheel. No, I'll just make sure I put it on the right point. So the smaller circles are a little bit more difficult. And then I may as well draw this distance here first. Oh no, I actually thought I'd get away with that drawing, but I need to draw the wheel first. So I need to set it to 25. I don't know what to call it, the mudguard, I suppose. Okay, and then if I measure up 30 and bring that across to meet that, that gives me that exact point, which by pure coincidence is the same point as you round that, but that's just constant. So I'll use a brown marker here, a dark marker. Okay, so I'll just go over this. I wouldn't usually sketch over it, I go over the compass, but just for the sake of the video. So there's basically my wheel and the hubcap, or no, the mudguard, what we'd call it, that encloses the wheel. So we're doing fairly okay there. We could now take our dark marker and heavy this in. And the last bit we have to do is just get the rest of the handlebars and the light. So we know here this is a 60-degree line, and we know here this is the radius of this. So I suppose I can do the radius first. So the center point for the radius is on point J. And we shall strike that way. And we know it comes up level like this. So I'm going a little bit too far, but it's no harm. And we know that that's coming back down 10. So if I come back down 10, put a little dot there, and that across to meet that. And then we have a 60-degree line from here. So from where this point, yeah. So that will go back to meet that. Just trying to see which bit is heavy. Oh, I actually heavied in the wrong bit first. So I shouldn't have a heavy line bit there. That bit there should be all that's heavy. Okay, so again what I'll do is, well, I don't know if I should shade it, because if I shade it I may take away some of the detail for the examiner. So obviously this little bit here should technically be light, but other than that, that's the question completed. So it has a bit of everything, and the main thing to take from it is, if you're unsure, this, as I said, this is probably the most difficult bit. Guess this distance and guess this distance. I figured out it's roughly 44 and 91, but if you were to look at it and say, well, guess 90 or even 95, guess 45, even 50, and then continue on with the question, it would have worked out fine. Okay, the only thing that may not have worked out is B. You may have to go a little bit inside or a little bit outside B. But that's the construction, so give it a go and see how it works out.